All right, so we are back, part two, finishing up our recap of AEW All In at Wembley Stadium. Finished off talking about the AEW World Tag Team Championship match between the Young Bucks and FTR. And we start off super chaotic. We got the Stadium Stampede.
We're in Wembley Stadium. This is a big old Stadium Stampede match fitting the Blackpool Combat Club. That's Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, featuring Mike Santana with first name, and Ortiz versus who, Jack?
The Best Friends, Trent Beretta, Chuck Taylor, Orange Cassidy, Penta, and Eddie Kingston.
My goodness. We got a whole lot of people involved here.
Yeah, I saw someone mention how they just found it hilarious that Santana returned and has a first name now.
Mike.
But
he's not the one with the hat, was he?
No, that's Ortiz.
That is Ortiz.
But yeah, Santana's making his return as he got injured during last year's Blood and Guts, making his return. Super jacked. He looks huge after coming back.
And the two of them seemingly turning their back on Eddie Kingston, and Eddie Kingston goes, "Hey, listen, I don't blame you, and frankly, I respect you. Well, I'm gonna gut you in that ring." That's what he said on Dynamite.
Yeah, Eddie. I was super excited to see Eddie in this, and it was funny. It'll be a talking point later, but it was funny to see that on Friday SmackDown. I don't know if you saw, sir, but they did like a Terry Funk Memorial like hardcore tag team match, and like people were like, for a Terry Funk Memorial match, that wasn't hardcore at all. So a lot of people were like, you already know Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley are gonna do that man justice.
You know, CM Punk in the first match of the night did some kind of toe hold in honor of him that, that'll work. But no, this one's going to be hardcore, Jack.
Yeah, and there's just so much to love about this match. There was so much chaos, but so much hilarity as well. I think maybe it's worth establishing that most men stay near the ring, but we've got a few folks really going out there. Eddie and Wheeler Yuta and Trent Beretta. No. Chuck Taylor and who else? I know for a while, Claudio and Eddie were fighting in the stands.
That's it. Claudio and Eddie, Wheeler and Chuck.
Yeah.
They're in the stands.
Yeah. That was pretty crazy. To the viewers, we're just going to list off a bunch of to the listeners, we're just going to list off a bunch of spots. I have to mention this one right away because it was the most hilarious spot to me. And I so badly wish that people were watching with me. Because it was a morning show, there wasn't people around to watch with me. So yeah. I really wish either my friends or my dad and brother were watching this with me, because it was just so hilarious to see them do that spot where Penta gets hit with a power driver, I think on a chair, and they do this whole injury thing. They're walking him out, and you're like, oh man. Like, I saw people online, because I was like looking at live reactions, and people were like, oh, Penta might have broken his neck and all that. Like, people were very scared. All for him to come back out in a new outfit. He comes out in all red. He comes out as Penta Oscuro. And
right.
I just found it so funny that he did this fake injury angle and came out with a whole new outfit.
It's incredible, Jack. I was like, oh my. And he comes out right away and wants to do a sunset flip off a ladder onto tables on either Santana or Ortiz, I'm not sure which one, and he breaks the ladder because he climbs it up on the wrong side.
I saw people saying he broke the ladder with his sheer energy, his sheer boss energy after coming out for that.
And even crazier than that, Jack, he hits the move. They got the ladder to stand up long enough to hit the move off of.
Yeah, he did not let that stop him at all.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna bring it up later, Jack, right? But I'm a wrestler who has this alter ego, right? The Painmaker sort of dilemma. It actually happens more than you think in this show.
Yeah. Oh man.
And it's all cringe.
Yeah. What else is there? I mentioned, Mox and Eddie. Mox comes out with a fork and starts stabbing Orange Cassidy in the forehead, making him bleed. And then, of course...
Oh, you know what? Before Penta transitions, he gets the skewers. We got a skewer spot, Jack. And this may be the grossest. This is, I think, the only time in the night, Jack, I audibly make a noise. I audibly, react. Because they are just stuck. They are just stuck in Jon Moxley's forehead. And, they are not stuck well.
Yeah. I thought the skewers looked pretty bad when he fought Desperado. I thought it was that bad, but this one, yeah, the way that they were just bundled up in the circle and the way they looked, I was like, oh. And then to make it worse, there was the second wave where they just, he tries to stand up to, sell it, and you just see a bunch of them pop out, but he still has some stuck in. I was like, oh my goodness.
It's so a body horse status.
Yeah, nobody loves seeing their own blood more than Jon Moxley.
Oh my! Hey, how about the part where Claudio and Eddie are up in the stands? They're high up in there, right? I think they stood in on an elevator with each other, but it's a part of the area that there isn't a lot of fans in. You know, if they sold 81,000 tickets, there were a few thousand tickets left to be sold. And Nigel McGuinness on commentary goes, they cleared the area. This is to make sure everyone is safe. That's why they don't see any fans up in those seats.
Oh, man. Yeah, and then, they were fighting super high up. And I just like how Eddie, went straight for him, you know.
Yeah.
There was a spot where Sue comes out in her white van. I thought someone was going to be in the van.
I thought it was going to be Eddie, you know?
Yeah.
I knew he'd make a dramatic return to the action.
Yeah.
But it's...
Yeah, I thought someone was going to be in there. I do find it funny, the commentary line where they were like, when did she get her British license?
That's very funny, right?
Yeah, and we get the spot where they take her tray of cookies and hit Moxley with it. And
Moxley steals a kiss from Sue, and Trent is coming after him.
Yeah. Again, we hear from commentary. I think it was Nigel McGuinness. I think we hear him say, hey, I was going to take a couple of those home from catering. And then we get the spot where Orange Cassidy, he wraps up his hand in duct tape, but he does it the opposite way so that the sticky side's on the outside. And Moxley had just introduced the glass. He goes and sticks his hand into that bucket of glass so that it sticks to the tape. And he ends up using that to hit Claudio with the Superman punch, glass-filled hand. And then we get Eddie, who had made his return. He goes, he's hitting people with the steel chair wrapped in barbed wire, and he tackles Moxley through that piece of wood with barbed wire on it.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that was a pretty crazy spot. And then Orange Cassidy gets the pinfall victory for his team.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does, and that's after Orange DDTs Moxley onto said broken glass.
Oh, yeah, that happened too.
Yeah, it was absolute carnage. This match went on forever, but I loved every second of it.
Yeah, and I mentioned, the crowd playing into it. I will say this now so people, know, because honestly, because of the experience I had watching this match, it'll likely make potentially the end of the year list, though towards the back end, just because I think it would be unfair to include it more higher up. I do still have Anarchy in the Arena above all the different stipulation matches they've done so far, AEW, solely because it was so hilarious watching that match with non-wrestling friends. So seeing their reactions to all the stuff that happened in that Anarchy in the Arena match, if this had that same experience, I would probably put them on the same level. But because my friends were there with me to watch Anarchy in the Arena, I still have that one as my favorite from the year. At least through these type of stipulation matches. And,
to go back to our last episode, Jack, we were talking about Kenny Omega, Kota Ibushi, these multi-man matches, right, depriving us of singles matches. I'm, longing for a good old-fashioned Jon Moxley one-on-one, Mm-hmm. I don't care enough about Wheeler. I don't, and Claudio, I could take or leave, right? Jon Moxley is a guy I'd love to see go one-on-one with somebody. And he has been buried in these Blackpool Combat Club matches, right?
Yeah.
But they keep being really good. They keep, you know what I mean? We saw one in Long Beach, right? There was one in Dominion. And you just like every time these guys, do this, I can't deny. Wow, it's good. It's hard hitting. It's it's hard to argue. But I want my Jon Moxley 1-on-1.
And the only counterpoint I'll give to that is what you were saying at the start of the first episode. You were talking about the lack of build. I think I even mentioned this potentially in... It may have been our Forbidden Door episode, because I think that's the only time we got to talk about AEW during that period of time. But I mentioned, hey, at anywhere at all during that build to the Elite and Blackpool Combat Club's match at Double or Nothing,
right?
Why did we not see single matches between Kenny Omega and Claudio, Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, and one of the Young Bucks or Hangman, And a lot of people will say, you got to save those for big pay-per-views. Well, if we've seen anything through last year's AEW and this year, how we saw people like Pac and Jamie Hayter miss the show due to injury, Bryan Danielson missed the show due to injury, do these matches as soon as you can. You can't always wait for pay-per-view.
Hey, if we're waiting for a big pay-per-view, how's 81,000 people sound, huh? Is this big enough for you? Come on, right?
Yeah.
And God, the Blackpool Combat Club's been doing it. And I think, is this the heel thing? Am I falling for the heel thing? Am I resenting them for the choices that they're making? And I'm falling for their characters' motivation? Or is he hurt too?
Yeah, no lie.
Hey, if we can stay in the cynical realm for just a bit longer, Jack, I have a theory. Right, we talked in the last episode about Miro and Powerhouse Hobbs signing a contract for All Out, which happens on Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Random combination of two guys we don't see a lot of, right?
Yeah.
And I bring that up, and also with this match we just finished reviewing, right? You got the best friends in maybe the most prominent position they've ever been in, right?
Yeah.
Why, Jack? Why do you think we would want to put Powerhouse Hobbs and Miro and Trent Beretta and Orange Cassidy, who's a title holder? I'm not going to fault him, but how's Chuck Taylor getting so high up on this card and such a prominent role, Jack?
You know what? It probably relates to a lot of the other stuff of that backstage politics more than likely.
Hey, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that they're all playable characters on a video game that just hit shelves on June, and people need to see them in action. And you're like, uh-oh, why would people care about Miro unless he's on TV? Uh-oh, why is anybody going to play as Chuck Taylor or Trent Beretta unless we show them that they're worth playing as?
That is a pretty funny reasoning, and I could totally see it.
They're like, that's absurd. We're not pushing people who are on the game just for the game's sake. Hey, Jack Perry is the FTW champion.
But moving on, and because I know we don't have enough time, I won't go fully into rant mode, but I will rant for a little bit. But our next match, it's a fatal four-way for the AEW Women's World Championship. We have Toni Storm, Britt Baker, Saraya, and champion Hikaru Shida in this fatal four-way.
And I don't know about you, Jack, but I have been very much so enjoying Toni Storm's recent character development.
Yeah, she's been hilarious.
She's lost her title to Shida and has sort of become this Marilyn Monroe throwback, this 20s Turner Classic Movies actress, worried that she's falling out of the spotlight, Yeah. It's been incredible, actually.
Yeah, her character work has been hilarious,
Yeah. Her her freaking out to Tony Schiavone in a backstage interview, right? It's as if she's oblivious to the fact that it's 2023. You know what I mean? Or oblivious. And she's playing a former women's champion who's just not handling loss well. And it's really cool.
Yeah, that's been real well. I've been enjoying that. I had been enjoying Sheeta's run, her second run with the title, She was having some pretty good matches. You brought this up to my dad before recording. WWE started doing promos for Shinsuke Nakamura and subtitling them. I don't think they subtitled Shida's promos. I think what they did is she showed, hey, I can cut a pretty decent promo in English if you give me the time to, and, you know, cut you an English promo that you can edit around to, you know, make sure it's good for television and all that, you know?
Yeah. And in the build to this match, right? I love the video package. Like, so the video package is pretentious and pretends like everything's okay in the women's division. It's not. But you got Britt Baker, like, really saying that at the first All In, the one in Chicago, like 4 or 5 years ago, she's a different person. Like, she was somebody who was, like, unsure of herself or, you know, not ready for that spotlight. And she's come a long ways, right?
Yeah.
Then you have the neat return to form story for Saraya that they're not telling, but they told, like, literally in the span of like 3 days.
Yeah. And that's the most upsetting part to me, is that you have these different characters, their motives. You have the building blocks for this build, and we saw none of that during the build except for, like, the final week that they wanted to start telling you, oh yeah, Saraya's making this huge comeback. You know
what this is? This is Bianca versus Bianca versus Sasha at that WrestleMania. Remember that garbage build that they threw away the night before? And they were like, this is 2 women of color really breaking boundaries. You're like, it is. It always was. I sure wish that was the focal point of any and all of this.
Yeah. You know, and it just speaks levels to where this division is at, sadly.
Well, you know, I have high hopes for Toni Storm, right? I wouldn't mind if Ishida retains, but I think a lot of us saw the writing on the wall, Jack, when Saraya comes out with her entire family to We Will Rock You by Queen.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is quite the entrance.
Yeah, and, you know, when it comes to wrestling, you know me, sir. Maybe it's not as well documented on this podcast, but I try and remain optimistic. You know, I try and be optimistic. But going into this match, I was a full-on pessimist, and people tried telling people who were being pessimistic different the entire week. Oh, Saraya's not winning. You're just trying to find something to be mad at before it even happens. Really? Are we trying to find stuff to be mad at, or do we just know what Tony Khan is at this point when it comes to the women's division? Because me, I'm frustrated. Again, like I was telling Ricardo before this recording, because he was asking me like how I felt about the show. I have nothing to say about Saraya. I have nothing to say about really any of the 4 women involved. As I always say on this podcast, whenever I say anything, I'm commenting on the characters I see on television. I'm not trying to say anything about the people, you know, behind the camera. But to me, it's just like, how can you have someone like Shido, when she won this title at AEW Dynamite 200, everyone looked at it as, you know, something to light a fire in the division, something to really use as a rebuilding phase. You know, you have someone who you know can do well, can give you good pay-per-view matches and all that. You can rely on them. If you didn't change the title, you have Toni Storm, who is showing that she can do good character work. You can rely on her, you know. Why are we constantly, you know, screwing these women over who have shown that they can do good things for your company? And why, you know, again, I'm not trying to say anything bad about her, but why are we putting the title on Saraya, who, yes, has a good story, and yes, I have no doubt she'll likely be a transitional champion to, you know, do a different story potentially. But you're giving it to someone who works limited matches. Like, I'm pretty sure she worked less than 3 matches in this month, you know, potentially in the past 2 months. She can't work that way, and she personally herself knows that. That's why she started doing more managing for both of the members in the Outcast, you know. She wrestles occasionally. Why do we not keep it at that, you know? But of course, I as someone was saying, I get it. Give her a nice moment with her family in front of the big crowd. But for me, I'm more upset. I hope people realize when I'm saying all this and when I'm projecting my criticisms and things I'm upset about, it's all directed towards Tony Khan, not the women. I'm upset with the booking of this division. I'm upset that there's so many countless talent in that division that don't get the equal opportunity to showcase themselves, to showcase their talent, and don't get the equal time.
Jack told us how the match ended. Jack, that's exactly what you set us up for. You told us at the beginning of the first episode you had a lot to say, and I appreciate and I honor everything you just said.
Yeah, it's just frustrating to me, especially because, like, again, it is well documented throughout all seasons of this podcast that I, am a big fan of women's wrestling. I try and show support to it, but at the same time, again, nothing to the women, but I'm not going to force myself to try and I'm not going to force myself to act like, whatever I'm given is fine, like how we were saying on the first episode, that just being given a second match on this card isn't enough. It has to be something that warrants it,
Right.
And it's like it's a similar thing here where I'm happy that they put all 4 women on this card to go out there and showcase, and they had a pretty good match. I was enjoying it, but it's just the finish and the booking decisions from Tony Khan that constantly take me out of it. And before people want to start this whataboutism, go and look at any of the pay-per-views Mr. Solis and I cover. What was I talking about for the SummerSlam pay-per-view? There's only one, or not one, but we're leaving out so many women's matches on that card as well, I'm very consistent in the fact that I criticize both these companies, and hey, you may think I'm a shill for Stardom, but I can't tell you how many times on my own time that I've personally criticized a lot of their booking decisions as well. But again, they do it a lot better in my eyes, where the fact that, like, I guess, I will admit it's easier for a promotion like Stardom to do it because they're all women promotion. They can give them the time and dedication. But, with AEW, the only restriction they have is whatever restrictions they're getting from Warner and whatever restrictions Tony Khan's putting on that company, or that division, I mean.
Yeah, and like you said the last episode, right? I mean, we have a TBS champion who's nowhere to be found, right? You've got Shida. Like, with this match could have gone exactly as it did, but Shida winning and looking stronger for it, and the division comes out stronger for it. Mm-hmm. But to play devil, quote, or parentheses, Tony Khan advocate, Jack, we are coming out of this victory with Shida with a chip on her shoulder. She's got something to prove against the veteran, right? Saraya. You got the Outcast seemingly falling apart before our eyes. You got her, like, Saraya and Tony, a story that's there, right? That's like rooted in like a loss of trust. We'll see what they do, but I'm with you, sir. And goodness, they could do better. This AEW is supposed to be the alternative, right? They're supposed to be doing things differently and better than what we're all used to. But I'll tell you what, this feels very WWE to me. This feels so WWE.
Yeah, especially because this match only goes 8 minutes and 50. And again, the whataboutism. People are going to be like, oh, look, for the people who want to discredit, competitors like Saraya and Britt Baker, and, again, if you can find, ways to justify your criticism of their in-ring work, sure, go ahead. They're gonna be like, oh, with those two in the match, you can't expect the match to go any longer, then why are we putting people like that in these matches? Why are we not putting our best workers, If for the men's, we're putting our best workers against each other. We're putting FTR versus the Young Bucks for the tag titles. We're doing Bullet Club Gold and Takeshita versus the Golden Elite. Why are we not putting more women? Like, I saw people saying, again, maybe it's just to get more women on the card, but why did we not do something like Chris Statlander, Willow, and I think maybe like Sky Blue versus, Nyla Rose, Emi Sakura, people like that. Like, at least give them a 6-man on, like, the pre-show, perhaps, And then another thing, I brought it up at the beginning of the first episode. Tony Khan was saying, the pacing of this show. Would the pacing have been messed up to just give the women 2, 3, 5 more minutes to have a longer match? They got 8 minutes on the card. One women's match on a basically 5-hour show, and it was less than 10 minutes.
I'd be remiss, Jack, to not also bring up the elephant in the stands, watching all of the action. Of course, I'm talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling, Stardom's Mercedes Moné. I'm not sure quite who she is signed to, right? But she's catching all the action, Jack. And again, I'm gonna put on my cynical hat. I try not to wear too often, but you know how AEW, again, going against the grain, bringing up these guys' pasts, right? Talking about, oh, Konosuke, he was trained by Ibushi and Kenny Omega and DDT. You think they're going to talk about Mercedes past, especially with Saraya, who just won a title in front of 81,000 people for the first time in 9 years? What happened 9 years ago, AEW? Uh-oh.
Yeah. I'm going to put my cynical hat on and say that Mercedes watched this all happen and said, yeah, I'm going back to New Japan.
Woo-wee. Thanks, no thanks.
Thanks for the ticket, Tony, but I'm gonna stick over there.
Thanks for the nosebleed ticket, Tony.
Couldn't even do the NXT takeover where they're like more in the front.
I ain't gonna say with them.
Oh man, but we move on, and I'll admit I remember thinking this as we moved on. After this match, I was so taken out of the show. Like I was just like, how am I supposed to care about whatever follows, you know? But I will admit, I gotta give props to him. Swerve Strickland, you know, one of my guys, he definitely helped lift my mood and spirit a bit after that, you know, and after the poor division, the women's division. But I have to give him props. We'll see it again in this match, but I was also surprised that how much Tony Khan opened his wallet to get a lot of licensed music. And
we had
really
Queen in the women's match.
Yeah, and it happened in this match too, as I mentioned. But for Swerve, he gets the people that made his song to perform it with him. And, you know, I love Swerve. I see all online that people really love Swerve. We see, even in the U.S., we see how much they love him. But this entrance really surprised me at how much people love him, because as soon as that Whose House hit, it felt super loud when the crowd responded, Swerve's house.
As the crowd responded, I definitely felt that too. And you're like, what an incredible entrance for Swerve. How could you top that, Jack?
Yeah, how could you top it? Well, how
about Sting and Darby Allin coming out to Metallica's Seek and Destroy for some reason?
Yeah. That was crazy. I saw a lot of people talking about that, and that's why I was telling my dad, I'm like, man, Tony Khan really opened his wallet to get Metallica and Queen on the show.
Hey, in this match alone, it's a tag team coffin match. You only need to get one opponent in a coffin. We had Metallica, we had Swerve's rappers sing them out, right? But I think the song that beats them both is Christian Cage's TNA, My Immortal by Evanescence ripoff.
Oh, man. Oh, sir, this is completely random, but I forgot to mention. So you know how during the trios match we were talking about Jim Ross speaking nonsense on commentary?
Yeah.
Did you catch what he said during Saraya's entrance?
Saraya's entrance to Queen and the family. No, what does he say?
Apparently people heard it. I didn't hear it, but apparently as she was making her entrance, he said something essentially like asking where Freddie Mercury was.
No.
And people were like, does he know? But I just thought of that because of the fact that, the licensed music. But yeah, Christian Cage coming out was, all four men look good. They really look good, especially with their entrances.
Get this. I saw this on Instagram. Christian Cage carrying around that TNT championship like he's Luchasaurus, right?
Yeah.
Do you realize that Luchasaurus has never touched the title on TV?
Yeah.
The title that he won and is currently the holder of?
I think even, I'll double check right now as I'm saying this, but I think even on their roster page, you see like all the other champions, their graphics show them with the championship. Not Luchasaurus. He literally does not have the title in that photo. Yeah. So, what about the match, sir? What'd you think?
It was incredible. It was so fun.
Yeah, super chaotic, but yeah, super entertaining. I really love all four in this match. They're super entertaining. I'm so desperately waiting for Swerve to be given some type of title.
You know, and I was surprised too, sir, that Nick Wayne and AR Fox weren't in it. I guess one of them couldn't get across the seas or something or other.
Yeah,
maybe he got. They wrote him off. They beat him up like Collision, maybe.
Yeah. What's it called? Yeah, I will say I have been fully entertained by this build. I've loved, again, I mentioned how, you know, it's always interesting when they have certain stories intertwining, or like someone being a part of multiple stories. I really liked how throughout this build they did the simultaneous build of Darby and Swerve, and also Darby wanting to challenge for that TNT title, which is how this match comes together.
Yes.
As far
he
as
will on Sunday.
Yeah, and as far as the match goes, Sting was just going crazy when he did that. I think he did like a flip into a leg drop or something. I forgot what it was when he put Swerve through the table. I was like, this man is insane. He
goes for a splash that doesn't break the table, and the crowd tell him to do it again, and he does it again. And it's so Sting. I've never been such a big fan of Sting as I have these last 2 years.
Yeah, there was Darby Allin taking the back bump onto the coffin, which I just couldn't believe.
How about Darby Allin fighting for 5 or 6 minutes with his hand tied behind his back?
Yeah. Nigel McGuinness on commentary when they're trying to put Christian in the coffin, and they were like, "Don't." He's like saying, "Don't do it. That man is a father." And then Tony Schiavone reminds him that Cage literally kicked his own daughter out of the arena a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
that was hilarious. I like the spot where Sting used the baseball bat to prevent the lid from closing.
That was good.
And then the finish of the match, they finally get Swerve down and out, and they put him in the coffin to win the match. And it was funny because someone later on after the match, like a couple minutes after, they went back and looked, and they were like, "Wait, the match hasn't ended." And people were like, "What are you talking about?" And they show a picture. You see Swerve's
hair
sticking out.
Right? I saw his hair too, and I thought by the bat rules, he ain't in there all the way. But, my favorite part of all of this, Jack, besides Sting being incredible, I think he no-sold a chair shot like a beast.
Yeah.
But how about Darby Allin's, I don't know, this must be the first coffin drop that's, true to its name.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got to mention Sting with the, Joker-esque makeup.
Yeah. And how about his, he puts on that stupid accent in the video. They're walking down the cobblestone roads wearing a top hat. You're like, what the heck is going on? He goes from super OP, you know what I mean, to just this corny relic of the 80s. Because he's both, Jack. Oh, Luchasaurus, he interfered. Nick Wayne showed up. And he got choke slammed onto his skateboard for his troubles. I love a good choke slam in 2023. Luchasaurus has got a good one, and your brother and my favorite wrestler, Damian Priest, has an incredible choke slam.
Yeah, real good stuff from this match. Real good from all four competitors. Honestly, this might be one of my favorite matches of the night.
It's up there, for sure, for me as well.
Yeah. Moving on to our next match, we had one, again, that's similar to other sort of matches. Had people kind of questioning it, had people wondering how good it will be. We have Chris Jericho facing off against Will Ospreay.
I loved Will. I want Will Ospreay to fight so many other people first, but I loved his one, Jack, that they contextualized his relationship with Don Callis, right? Hey, beat Kenny Omega for the U.S. title, and I'll get you on that Wembley show. And I'm like, yes. A narrative. But also I loved his want and desire to be a man who beat Okada, Omega, and Jericho in the span of 2 months. I'm like, okay, I want you to do that as well.
Yeah, I really like that motive. I really enjoyed Ospreay being able to be on the biggest show in his home, and I will say, or I'll bring it up later if we have time. But, yeah, it was cool to see him get, this showcase in front of his hometown, or not hometown, but home country, I guess you could say, just to be more
Any
specific.
any particular spots strike you, sir?
Um, let me.
You know, it Will is wrestling around Jericho. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I will mention this. Sorry to Chris Jericho and his band, but that performance of Judas did not come across well, at least on the feed for those at home, because it almost felt like his mic was cutting in and out because I couldn't hear a word from Judas, and
Yeah.
it sounds different obviously in person, but like for at least me watching, it's like I almost couldn't hear even the crowd singing along.
Here's a question for you, Jack. Who's the face and who is the heel of this match?
Well, I think the face of the feud is Jericho, obviously, because he's being wronged by Don Callis.
Right.
But this is England, so Ospreay's the face automatically in the match itself.
It's so crazy how, like, I tried not to let that diminish my enjoyment of the match. But, Jack, I'm putting together a Lego Batman meal, right? And I'm like, I really want to watch this match, but I don't think I'm going to miss anything putting this Lego Batmobile together right now.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I was still watching it, but I was like, man, they got a lot of things mixed up in this match, like the dynamic, but also, it was still pretty good. Obviously you got Ospreay getting to showcase here. You got Jericho showing. There was the spot where Guevara uses the bat on Ospreay.
Yeah.
He finds a way to still get back into it and fight out of it. And I just liked how dominant Ospreay looked. Despite not being a talent signed to AEW, they gave him a dominant showcase in front of his home crowd.
I agree. No. Yeah, he definitely looked, I think better than Jericho comes out of this match looking, you know what I mean? Because I think if there were like awkward moments, like awkward Ricochet Logan Paul kind of moments, I don't think anyone is confused by who caused them.
Yeah. Speaking of which, sir, real quickly, we have about 8 minutes left and 2 matches to go.
Alrighty, we can wrap up our Will Ospreay Jericho talk here.
And unless you have any other thoughts, I don't think we might have too much to say about the next match. It is our Trios Champions House of Black defending against the Acclaimed with Billy Gunn.
Mm-hmm.
Who had the story was he retired for all of about 2 weeks, I think, about.
Yeah, just about.
But the Acclaimed are coming in here hoping to get a victory and win a title with Billy Gunn, the House of Black. I don't know if we're going to have enough time in this episode. I will say, potentially, if we don't have enough time, we could potentially save it for next week's episode because Payback is this week.
Oh my.
If there isn't enough time to talk about on this episode, what I was alluding to at the start of the first episode, we have House of Black paying tribute to the late Bray Wyatt with their entrance.
Oh, of course. That's, of course, something we could address, we should address, and it was the biggest news in wrestling after Wednesday.
Yeah. So we get that pretty standard trios match, we get, the Acclaim being baby faces. They have the spot where they take out Julia Hart to equal to take her out of the match and make things equal, not having to deal with her. I find it very surprising that Billy Gunn kicked out of the Black Mass. I thought that was quite the booking choice, if I say so myself.
Well, this wasn't AEW Billy Gunn, Jack. This is Attitude Era Billy Gunn.
Yeah. But we get them hitting the mic drop, and they win the trios titles.
Yes, they do.
Get a big moment with Billy Gunn in front of the biggest crowd. Good for them.
Yep, they did their scissors thing, 81,000 strong.
And now we move on to our main event with the now Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, Adam Cole and MJF for the AEW World Championship main event of Wembley. What did you think of this match, sir?
I was over the night. I was really over the night. I didn't care one way or the other how this was going to go, right? And I don't think they needed the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship match or the titles for this match story to play out.
Yeah, especially given that a lot of the expected story elements or ones that could contribute to the story didn't even happen in any of those circumstances.
They didn't. This is a good old-fashioned Roman versus Jay kind of, dragging on to no real definitive conclusion.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I definitely felt the same way given the amount of ref bumps in this match where I was like, okay, if I always dog on Roman on our podcast episodes about, the way his matches go, I have to do the same for MJF where it's like, okay, here's another ref bump and another one. And the only reason it's different is because we have this whole buddy-buddy system playing out with Adam Cole. And, they play with it in the match where, like, they start off friendly, but then because the two men are the biggest, heels and all that,
right,
you slowly see them start doing stuff that gets under the skin of each other, and that slowly starts ramping up the hostility.
And here's what gets me, Jack. Supposedly MJF is the devil. He comes out with his mask and does the pomp and circumstance, right? But what part of his presentation here was devil-ish, devil-like, right? He's actually holding back. He's actually very, complicated. And I don't know. I wanted to see something more sinister and more straightforward for a guy who calls himself the devil.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll mention, though, is that the good thing to come out of this storyline is that we've seen some, I would say improvement and development in MJF's character that we weren't seeing beforehand,
That's true, right? That, I've never been able to trust anybody, right? So he's beginning to wonder if he should have,
Yeah. We do see a spot where both men keep trying to cheat, and I like the Eddie Guerrero tribute where instead of just laying there after getting hit with the chair, to play it up better, like to get a better chance at a disqualification, he puts it around his neck, and you just see Bryce Remsburg being like, how did it get on his neck then,
Yeah, right. It's really funny.
Yeah. There's the spot where it looks like it's going to go to a draw because both men pinned each other, but then MJF says they're going until they get a winner rather than 5 more minutes,
And that's exciting. It pops the crowd. That gets me maybe interested. But we end in a roll-up, Jack.
Yeah. Oh, I got to mention this spot because I just liked how hilarious it was. We have MJF refusing to hit the tombstone on Adam Cole on the announce table. Adam Cole does it without hesitation.
Adam Cole takes way more shots at MJF than MJF takes on Adam Cole. And I don't know, man. Everything was just really imbalanced and weird.
Yeah. And then before you mentioned, it does end in a roll-up. And before that, we get Roderick Strong trying to interfere twice,
Twice, Jack. And he leaves. And that's a long ramp. And somehow he just appears for the second time going, do it now.
Yeah, but of course Cole refuses. MJF rolls him up. And then we get the after match segment where, MJF's trying to console his friend, and Cole gets very mad, throws away the Ring of Honor title, and MJF, shows that human side of him, being like, "Oh, is that all you cared about? Was getting this title? You didn't care about me?" And he gives him the title, saying, "Do it, then do it. I know you're gonna do it, But nope. Cole doesn't betray him. Instead, he hugs it out with MJF to the displeasure of Roderick Strong in the Kingdom.
And this would all mean more to me, Jack, if it wasn't based on a tag team that was thrown together in July.
Yeah, I don't know. I know people are saying you gotta stretch the story out, but we've seen what happens when you stretch the story out with Roman, What level are we going? And I get it. This is being done in a much shorter time span than Roman, so maybe you could stretch it out. But I just find it weird that there wasn't any sort of development we thought, and maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, it's what more development are we gonna see when they have another show this upcoming Sunday?
Right.
It's just a bit confusing, and we mentioned that it would be a bit confusing having a show a week later. But with 20 seconds left in this episode, sir, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Yeah, thank you all for joining for these 2 episodes covering AEW All In, and we'll likely catch you next week covering Payback and any news that comes out of All Out.
Woohoo! R.I.P. Bray.
R.I.P. Bray Wyatt.